All right, here we have the next installment of this week's Torah portion, the adventures of Yitzchak. Yitzchak. So Yitzchak just finished this whole traumatic experience with his brother that his brother Esav, his evil brother Esav, that his brother Esav sold him his birthright for a bowl of lentil soup. And the birthright means that he would have been able to serve God in the temple, because the firstborn were supposed to serve until the sin of the golden calf. And that's when God chose the Kohanim to be the servants, the serving. But before that, it was the firstborn. They were the ones that were supposed to be serving. So Esav was supposed to be serving in the temple, and he sold it for a bowl of lentils. Wasn't worth anything to him. Okay. So next adventure of Yitzchak is that there was a famine. There was a famine in the land of Israel. Last time we also learned about there being a famine in the days of Abraham, when God told Abraham, Lech lecha, leave the land where you are, go to the land of Canaan, and it's going to be good for you. And Abraham went there, and it wasn't good. They didn't have anything to eat. And Abraham had to go to Egypt, and in Egypt his wife was kidnapped. Well, pretty much the same thing happens again. They went to the land. There was a famine in the land of Israel. We're going to do this quickly because I want to get to the end part about the digging of the wells. That's what Yitzchak is known for. So there was another hunger in the land of Israel. It wasn't Israel yet. It was beside the famine. Yaakov's name had not been changed to Israel yet. So in the days of Abraham, and Yitzchak took his wife, Yitzchak, and he went to Avimelech, the king of the Plishtim, in a place called Gerar. So he says, Sifrona says, because from the days of Abraham until now, there was never any famine like this, that everybody had to leave the land of Israel, like Abraham did. And so he went to Avimelech to get permission because he wanted to leave his land. Avimelech, he was living there. Anyway, so God appeared to him and he said, don't do like what your father did. Your father left Canaan. There wasn't anything to eat, so he left and he went to Egypt. No. You have to live in the land where I tell you. So Yitzchak ends up never left Israel. From the time he was born, he never left Israel. He thought he would go down to Egypt, says Rashi, just like his father did in the days of hunger. And God said to him, don't. You are a Ola Tamima. You are a pure sacrifice, unblemished. And you can't go outside of the land of Israel. So it said, live in this land, and I will be with you. I will bless you, because to you and your offspring I will give all of these lands, and I will give the covenant that I swore to Abraham. You're going to get it. Hartzot ha'el, like these, says ha'el means ha'ela, like these lands. So it says, the lands I'm going to give you, this is the land of the Plishtim. This is also part of where God promised to Abraham. And this also agrees the Ramban. It says, I promised it, said maybe it could be that, said Yitzchak will be very successful in the land. That's what he meant, that we're going to see how he successfully becomes. Everybody is jealous of him. So he said, God says, I will increase your children like the stars of the heaven, and I will give your offspring all of these lands, and through them will be blessed all of the nations of the world. What does it mean? Everybody will be blessed through you. A person will say to his son, may your children be like Yitzchak, and that Yisrael will be blessed, Simcha. In other words, everyone will praise your name, and they'll say, it'll only be that my children should be like that. Because Abraham listened to what I said, and he did my that Abraham, he observed all of my Torah. And here's where we learn that Abraham did the whole Torah before it was given. Here it says, and that Abraham, God is saying to Yitzchak, Abraham, your father, when I tested him, he listened to my voice and he did my orders, namely the prohibitions in the Torah, etc., even the rabbinical ones. And my commandments, these are things that are not written in the Torah, but they should be, like, for instance, stealing and killing, murder. That even if they weren't written, mitzvotai are the laws which, even if they weren't written in the Torah, people know them automatically for just either your conscience tells you, or it's keep an orderly world. Like, for instance, stealing somebody's wife, or stealing somebody's mother, or killing people, stealing somebody's wife, or stealing somebody's mother, someone's money, or killing people. That's what's called, that Abraham, he did all of the commandments, the prohibitions, the positive ones, and the logical ones, the chukotai. Chukos are laws which are totally not logical, like don't eat pork, don't wear shatnez, don't eat milk and meat together. They make no sense. And Toratai, this is also, Abraham kept also the rabbinical laws of the Torah, because the rabbinical laws of the Torah, they also come from God. The rabbis just revealed what they are. They didn't invent them. Okay, yeah. So Yitzchak lived in this place called Gerar. Gerar was a place in Israel. Who knows? The place the people were there, so they started asking about his wife. Now Yitzchak, he was a nomad. He didn't really have any set place to live. So the people that were there, V'shalu anshe hamakom lishto, who is this lady that's with you? Rivka. She was very, very attractive. And he said, it's my sister, because he was afraid to say it was his wife, because they would kill him on the place, because she was very, very beautiful. It says Yitzchak was very beautiful. And so therefore he told Yitzchak, Rivka also, say that I'm your brother. So they were there in this place called Gerar for a while, and Avimelech looked out the window and he saw that Yitzchak Misachek et Rivka. It said that Yisachek, that they were having marital relations. He saw, I don't know where he looked from, but he saw that they were having marital relations. Excuse me. So he said not that they were actually having relations, but he saw that they were embracing in a way. Excuse me, that a brother and a sister would not embrace. So Avimelech called Yitzchak and he said, hey, she's your wife. Why did you say she was your sister? And Yitzchak said, I was afraid that you would kill me. I was afraid they would kill me. If it was my wife, so you would kill me, arrange my death, and then you'd say, your poor widow, I'll marry you. You wouldn't let her know that, so that she would be free. So now if she knows she's my brother, I said she was my sister, so you might think that there's some way that you can negotiate with me and you won't kill me to marry her. And that time we can escape or whatever. Anyway, Avimelech said, what'd you do to me? One of the people could have had relations with your wife and we would have a sin. Who's one of the people? He says, one of the people, that's him, the king, myself. So it said, Avimelech commanded everybody and said, anybody who touches this person was going to die. Yitzchak in that year, he planted 100 gates. 100 gates. What does it mean, 100 gates? That they estimated how much the land could possibly produce, and it made 100 times more than what everybody estimated. Another opinion says that they estimated how much it was worth, and they said that this land can produce 100 bushels, and the rabbi said that the 100 bushels was the tenth, that was the tithe that he gave them. So he gave 10 times as much, not 100 times as much. Okay, whatever it was, he was tremendously successful, and this is where we're going to start off today's lesson. It says that Yitzchak, the man, he became very, very great, and he continued and increased in his greatness very, very much. Rashi, everyone was saying, listen to this, everyone was saying, it's better the manure from the mules of Yitzchak than the gold and the silver of Avimelech. Avimelech was like the king. The Balatorium says that he was, sorry, one second. Rashi says, yeah, no, here. Where is this? Holech v'gadol ma'od is 3 times. This is like the Akedah. Borecha, borecha, b'har be'ar. It says in another place that Avimelech said, leave. Here it is. It's over here. Avimelech, v'yiv miknatzon, miknaboker, he had a lot of sheep, cows, servants, and the police team were very jealous of him. This jealousy is going to be a big theme throughout the history of Judaism, that whenever Jews succeed, the non-Jews are always jealous of them. When the non-Jews succeed, they're also jealous of them, but not to this degree. And the reason is because the Jews, usually they succeed, there's usually an element of not normal. I mean, the non-Jews, they basically own the countries where they are. And if Jews succeed, so it's like against big odds, how can they succeed? So therefore, they arouse the jealousy. It says, anyway, so all the wells that the servants dug in the days of Abraham, the police team closed them and they filled them with dirt. And he says, the HaChaim says, this was 2 levels. It says that Lo Yenuach Ashevet Arash Al Gorel Tzadikim. It's one of the Shir HaMalos, one of the songs of Psalms of King David. It says that the evil people can never succeed like the righteous ones do. And this tells you that the evil people are jealous. They do all sorts of tricks and they lie and they steal. They work day and night to acquire their money unjustly. And some Jew comes up and he makes the same amount and he does it in an amazing way. So everybody is jealous of him. Generally speaking, the Jews are not like the big time rich guys. Usually speaking, like the Bill Gateses and these people. But nevertheless, whenever a Jew succeeds, and a non-Jew of the same level will say, how did he succeed? I don't understand it. Must be something diabolical going on. And it says not only that, that they were jealous of Abraham, and they hated Abraham also. So all of the wells that Abraham made, they closed up. But then it says, V'yistamu, this is not only that they closed them up, but filled them up with dirt. It wasn't enough to them just to say that they filled them up with dirt, because after Abraham, maybe it could be that after Abraham died, they just closed them up and they put like stones or something. But then they thought, Abraham's going to die and we'll undo them. But after they were so jealous of Yitzchak, And so the jealousy became like doubled and redoubled. So they said, not only are we going to put these rocks there and that we can just move the rocks easily, but they stuffed the whole thing up with dirt. It was as though there was nothing, because a well you have to dig. So they undug it. So therefore Yitzchak had to re-dig them brand new. Okay. Avimelech said to Yitzchak, leave us, get out of here. You're too successful. He says, what does it mean too successful? Avimelech said that my greatness is not recognized anymore because you're so great. And there's no greater disgrace to the king than this. The king can build himself, what a palace Versailles or something. And Yitzchak was so rich that he could build 5 palace Versailles. So the king said, hey, I'm not the king anymore. And Sophronius is a little bit different. He says, because you're so strong and powerful, Tochal Ba'asher, with your richness, you can make a rebellion against me. In any case, now here we start getting to these wells. Okay, Yitzchak went and he camped in a place which is called Nachal Gerar, on the river of Gerar, and he dwelled over there, far away, it says. He was far away. And Yitzchak dug a well of water that was in the days of Abraham, which the Palestine had closed up after Avram died. And he called them names like the names that their father called them. So first of all, here we go. Here are the names. The servants of Yitzchak dug one well, and they found, there it is, a spring of living water, right? Spring of living water, there it was. They dug this well. We're going to learn this Ramban, this Kli Ykar. He brings down the Ramban in a second. And the shepherds of Gerar made a war with Yitzchak, and they said, the water belongs to us. And they called it Asek, because itasku, because they argued with them. So Yitzchak and his men went and they dug another well, and they fought on against this one also, and it was called Sitna. Sitna means also argument. And they moved from there. So the first one, it says that what the shepherds of Yitzchak made a war against the shepherds of Gerar. And that was the battle. The second one, it says that they fought. In other words, the people, it seems that the people were the ones that fought against it. And they called Sitna. And the third one they dug, and no one made a war against that. And that was called Rehovot. And they said, now God has widened for us and made us successful. Okay, here we have 3 wells that were dug, right? The first well was as a result of the shepherds of Yitzchak and the shepherds, and that one was called, right? Asek. Asek. The second one was called Sitna. Both of these words represent arguments. The second one wasn't because of the shepherds argue, it was because the people argue. The people, the dwellers of the town, of the country, citizens, they argued against you. And the third, and that was called Sitna, which also means argument, like Satan. And the third one was called Rehovot because it was wide. Okay, let's see what the Ramban says. The Ramban writes, and also in the book Toldus Yitzchak is another book, and also there's another book called Menorah Ma'or, that everything that happened to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, this is a sign for what's going to happen later on. And these 3 wells refer to the 3 temples. The temples are called a spring of living water because just like they made a war about the first 2 wells, and the third one was called wide and peaceful. Also, the first and the second temple, there was a big argument about it until they were destroyed. But the third one will be very, very wide and everything. So maybe I'll just repeat to this what he says over here. He says the first temple was destroyed because of the hatred of the leaders. The leaders. If you remember, as soon as the King Solomon died, so the kingdom split. and there were 10 tribes that were called Yisrael, and there were 2 tribes, Yehuda and Benjamin, that they were called Yehuda. So it was the kings that made the war. So that's what he says. Because of the reason, the argument which was between the kings of Israel and the kings of Yehuda. That was the kings. By the second temple, it says, the hatred and the argument was between the people themselves, the inhabitants of the citizens of Israel and the citizens of Yehuda. And therefore, in the second temple, they couldn't stop themselves. There was the hatred. Everybody hated everybody else. Everyone was arguing with everyone else. It says, but the third temple, that was the first temple. The second temple, it says also there was a different type of hatred. It was hatred for absolutely no reason. On the first temple, they argued because they were from different countries and each one was afraid that the other one would take something away from him because of the kingship. So each king thought that only he could rule. But the second temple, which that extends up to now, it says any generation that the temple is not built, so it's destroyed. So we're sort of destroying the temple. So therefore, people just sort of hate each other. And that's why it's called Sitna. That's why it's called Sitna, because it was just Satan. It's like it says the devil dances around the people and they make them hate each other for basically no reason. People just imaginary reasons. But the third temple, which will be in the days of the Melech HaMashiach, like it says, Lamarba HaMisra, or L'Shalom Ein Kates, there'll be unending peace. There'll only be peace and truth. Therefore, the third temple is going to be called Rehovot, because God is then going to widen our boundaries. In those days, when there was arguments between them, so no matter where they were, you could be in the biggest city in the world, but people hated each other. Nothing was big enough for them. They couldn't stand to see each other. And even a place that was very wide, it was narrow for them. Like RIC, we can see very clearly. And this will be in the exactly opposite. In the time when there's peace between the Jews, that no matter how narrow and small the land is, but nevertheless, and how many people live here, there'll always be peace and harmony between them. That's what it says. Even though there's a lot of people in the land, nevertheless, the land will be wide. And so we found in the second temple that because of the arguments that were there, so therefore, okay, and therefore it says, Bazaman Metzino Shalom Uprina Oretz, because no tzrichel, it says mitoch. It says there were a lot of people that just, in the second temple, a lot of people just left. They just left the land. Even though there was a lot of land and there was everything, but because there was arguments, as therefore the land was not big enough for everybody. So the third temple is going to be called Rehovot. So that's hinting at these 3 temples are the 3 wells that Yitzchak dug. The first 2 were destroyed, and the third one will be eternal and eternally wide. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the blessings that Yitzchak stole from Yaakov. I'm sorry, the blessings that Yaakov stole from Esav. I'm tired, I have to go to sleep. Yaakov stole from Esav.